1. It all started when my mom moved to Tijuana, Mexico, with her parents. She doesn't live there anymore. She was around 8 years old when this started happening. One day she heard the doorbell ring, so she told her mom that someone had arrived. My grandma looked out the window and saw no one, but my mom saw a 50-something-year-old man dressed with a gray suit and a black top hat. My mom thought nothing of it and moved on. This was the only time she got to see this spirit or entity. A few months passed and weird things started to happen. Every single night her bedroom would be filled with fog. She wouldn't open the window at night because there were tons of insects. My grandma would notice a strange light coming out of my mom's bedroom and would open the door and see nothing but fog, besides noticing how cold the room was compared to the rest of the apartment. This kept happening for months until they moved back to Jalisco. My mom grew up with a weird feeling of being followed or watched everywhere she went. This happened until she got pregnant with me. None of this happened until I was about 12 years old. I was in middle school, so I would normally wake up at about 6 a.m. to get ready for school. This was a normal school day, my alarm went off, and I was really tired, so I just disconnected it and went back to sleep. I was falling asleep again when all of a sudden I felt someone tap my shoulder 2 times. My back was facing the closet. I immediately looked around and saw no one. At first, I thought it had been my mom or my service dog that saw me move and just got up to check on me, but there was no one. My dog was sleeping near the bathroom door, that is, on the other side of the room, and my mom was downstairs. I got up and just started getting ready. At first, I got scared, then I just thought of the possibility of it being a muscular spasm. Weeks passed, and I started to look at my surroundings more. I could notice that there were some things out of place. I'm very organized and never move anything out of place, and that there were constant sounds while I was home alone. Every time I was home alone, I'd stay downstairs in the living room with my dog, and while I'm there, I can hear footsteps upstairs and doors opening and closing, and even as if they were trying to push them. I must clarify that we don't have crawling spaces, an attic, or a basement, since houses in Mexico are different, so there's no way someone else might be living here or trying to get in. I am now 16, and I still experience this thing. I went to an alternative therapist, who told me that she could feel this entity around me and that it was a male. If you're questioning if I've seen it, I have, only in dreams, and the times I've had sleep paralysis. It is not a bad entity. It has never hurt me in any way, but it's been stealing energy from me. 2. Some strange stuff happened in the house I grew up in. My dad, stepmom, myself, and my 2 sisters all lived in this house. So most of the time when something strange happened, it was easy to just say, maybe Ashley moved it. Or maybe Dad was getting a midnight snack. But there are 2 incidents that stand out the most in my memory. On a weekday, my dad picked me up from school and we went straight home. My stepmom and sisters were out running errands, so my dad and I were the first to get home. When we pulled into the driveway, I could see someone in our house. The particular window I saw this figure in gets a lot of indirect sunlight and doesn't reflect much of a glare. So you can clearly see the inside of our house during the day if the blinds are open. The figure was sort of androgynous looking and young. They had really white skin and super light blonde straight hair that touched their shoulders. They were wearing plain white clothing, and it was just standing there. And when our car was parked, it walked away slowly. I immediately told my dad I just saw someone walking in the house. He told me to stay in the car and immediately went inside and scanned around. All the doors were locked, nothing was missing, no signs of forced entry. I told myself and my dad I must have imagined it, and we moved on. My dad later told me that while he was inside scanning the house, he saw something moving out of the corner of his eye, but as soon as he turned to look, it was gone. I can't remember the exact timeline, but about 6 months to a year later, something else unexplainable happened. Once again, it involved just my dad and I. We were getting ready to leave the house, and we were the only ones home. Normally, when I'm done getting ready, I just get in my dad's truck. which he often left unlocked. I would leave out of the garage, and the sound of our garage is so loud that you can hear it from anywhere in the house. And it was my dad's cue that I was ready to go. Well, normally my dad gets in the car pretty quickly after me, but this time I was waiting for about 10 minutes. I figured he was doing something, maybe shaving, I don't know. I slumped down in my seat and listened to my iPod. My dad comes out of the house and opens the door to his truck. When he notices me, he jumped back and said, "What the hell are you doing in here?" He looked freaked out. I said, "I've been here for like 10 minutes. You didn't hear me leave out of the garage?" "No, I didn't, but you were just inside. I was just talking to you." I had to repeatedly assure him it definitely was not me he was talking to. He seemed really shaken up. Apparently, immediately before coming out to his truck, he called for me across the house and said, "Are you ready yet?" And he heard my voice shout back, "Yeah, I'll be ready in a minute, just finishing up." He said the voice was so clear and loud and sounded just like me, and he answered back, "Okay, I'll wait for you in the truck." Goes to the truck, sees me already in the truck, and shits his pants. After our exchange, he goes back inside, looks around the whole house, finds nothing and no one. Other, more simple stuff would happen. Like my sister said she could feel someone watching her while she used the bathroom, and would always pull the shower curtain back before she used the toilet to make sure no one was behind it. My stepmom often would lose jewelry and other accessories and look for them for weeks, only for them to turn up in really obvious places, like dead center in the middle of the dining table. This happens so many times. For this reason, she jokingly calls it Casper the Friendly Ghost. It didn't help that we had a really weird dog. He would often stop dead in his tracks and stare off into space. He would fixate on literal thin air, and we would joke that he can see ghosts. My parents still live there, and I don't know if weird stuff still happens or not. I don't know. Maybe someone was breaking in the house just to mess with us. We make a lot of jokes about it, but deep down we all know it was really freaky. 3. This all started about 2 years ago. I, 22 and female, was a college student living in LA with a 2-bedroom apartment with my roommate. I actively talk to spirit guides, practice tarot, and hold my own ritualistic practices working with nature and angels. However, I think I may have accidentally invited a dark spirit or energy into my life, and it has been attached to me ever since. While living in LA, I was very introverted and spent most of my time alone in my room with the door closed. Occasionally, I would go out with friends and stay over at their places for the night. I started receiving texts from my roommate asking if I was in my room when I wasn't home. I thought maybe she wanted to do something together or wanted privacy when her boyfriend came over, but didn't think much of it until it started happening almost every time I wasn't home. I finally confronted her about it, and she confessed to me that almost every time I wasn't home, she would hear my voice as if I was in my room, as well as my closet door opening and lights turning on. I instantly got goosebumps when she told me this, but never experienced anything firsthand myself. My roommate was a very smart and critical girl, and she seemed pretty shook up that this was happening, so I believed her and told her to just ignore it. Fast forward to this past month. I'm back living with my parents in their condominium, often going to spend weekends and nights over with boyfriend. About 2 weeks ago, at 3 a.m., my dad was woken up to what he described as my voice yelling "Daddy, help," repeatedly. I've never called him Daddy, and he thought this was odd, so he got up to check on me, but stopped mid-track once he remembered I wasn't home. My mom told me this, and I was instantly freaked out. I opened up and told my mom about my roommate's experiences, and we discussed the possibility of a spirit that mimics me and takes on my energy when I'm not around. Talking about it with my mom, I think, was a mistake, as unexplained experiences have been amplified since this conversation about 5 days ago. 2 days ago, I went out with my dad to do some errands, leaving my mom home alone. All windows and doors were closed in the house. My bedroom has 2 entrances, one to the bathroom that connects to my room, and the main front door of it. She heard both doors slowly creak open, and got up to check it out, sure enough. They were both fully open, and my parrot that lives in my room was noticeably startled as well. The next day she heard my voice in my room, and noticed a light turn on, exactly what my old roommate experienced, and was so freaked out that she went to stay with my neighbor until Dad came home later that night. I was at my boyfriend's when this happened. So, do any of you have knowledge on spirits mimicking people when they aren't around? I don't feel any negative energy personally in my room, but my parents' and roommates' experiences are too eerily similar for this to just be a coincidence, and I'm genuinely concerned that a negative energy is attached to me and affecting the people I care most about. Any advice and stories of similar experiences would be super appreciated. 4. In 2001, I was about 17. My family moved to the coast because my father had just gotten a job in the area. Because it was a bit of an urgent move, and the amount of rental properties that were available immediately were very few, we had to move into a 3-bedroom house that needed some work. It was meant to be a temporary home until we found something more suitable. We just needed to go to school and work in the meantime. The previous tenants weren't the tidiest of people, so we spent days cleaning while already living in the house. I remember my mother commenting that the house just didn't want to be clean. We painted the walls, but stains would still reappear, regardless of how many coats we applied. We eventually had to carry on with our lives. It was only meant to be a temporary situation, after all. Being a teenager and a middle child, I spent quite some time by myself in my room. I would listen to music at night while lying on my bed, relaxing before I got tired enough to fall asleep. At one point, something strange started happening. I would be lying on my bed with my eyes closed and feel the bed sink to my feet as if someone was sitting down. I assumed it was my old cat jumping on my bed, but when I looked to see where he was so I could pet him, he wasn't there. I shrugged it off as nothing at the time. I thought that maybe I was just drifting off into sleep. But it happened again and again, and I realized it was never my cat. In fact, I realized that my cat didn't ever come into my room. None of our cats did. I started getting slightly concerned after a while. I mentioned it to my mother, thinking to myself that it sounded like nothing, a mere trick of the mind. I still felt uneasy, though. It was like there was something wrong, something I couldn't prove or see, a nagging sense that I wasn't alone in my room. I stopped sleeping with my curtains drawn. They were always open. I needed the natural light coming from outside to feel safe enough to sleep. My concerns were later confirmed one night that I still remember clearly to this day, almost 20 years later. I woke up, suddenly terrified. I had an intense fear unlike anything I ever experienced before, or even since. I couldn't move. There was a tree outside my room casting shadows on my cupboard, which was right in front of my bed. I knew there was something bad right there in front of me among those shadows. I could feel it, like an overwhelming presence filling the space in front of me. An evil, threatening presence. I saw that one of the shadows on my cupboard was moving. This shadow was darker and moved with intention. As soon as I spotted it, I knew that was the source of my fear. I did the only thing I could do to protect myself. I prayed. After what felt like an eternity trapped, I was able to move, still terrified, too terrified to go past my cupboard to the door right next to it. I hid under my blanket, 17 years old and hiding under a blanket like the boogeyman was under my bed. I fell asleep in the early hours of the morning as daylight started coming in through my windows. I know what sleep paralysis is, and I'm convinced this wasn't it. The fear I felt that night as I hid in my bed, feeling like I'm not alone in my room, is something I will never forget. A month or two after the incident, my parents found a better place. I was scared of my room until we moved. I always slept with my head under the covers and made sure enough light was coming into the room. After we moved, it was like my family finally felt safe enough to speak about the darkness we all know was in that house. My brother told us about a dark figure he saw moving through the corridor area to the kitchen. My father said he saw a dark shape in the corridor near my room. But it was what my mother told me after we moved that shook me the most. She told me that when a family friend and his wife visited us and stayed in my room, he told my mother the following day that there was something evil in there. He was known for sensing the supernatural and seemed quite spooked to my mother as he was telling her this. I could see when she was telling me about this that she was spooked as well. When I asked her what he said exactly, as I was recollecting my memories to tell this story, she said that he just didn't want to elaborate, because if he did, we would never go into that room again. Damn, that's not much better, I thought. The family friend has since then passed away without ever elaborating on what exactly he sensed in that house. My mother also told me that the couple that moved in after us had a priest come to cleanse the house. I still am very suspicious of every house I move into, now with my own family, making sure to burn sage every so often. I don't ever want to share a house with evil again. 5. I want to preface this and say it's not meant to fearmonger or scare anyone. This is just something very, very rare that happened to me for a few reasons. A perfect storm of events that led to this. So don't get scared or worry that this is happening to you or anyone. Fear attracts fear, so be fearless. I'm a very skeptical person. I have a hard time believing people's random stories anywhere, especially Reddit. So I understand people's skepticism, if there is any. This happened to me when I was 13 years old. I grew up in a very strict fundamentalist Christian household with 8 brothers and sisters. My parents read us the Bible every day, prayed every day, weren't allowed to have sugar, etc. It kinda sucked. But my parents did it because they truly thought it was the right thing. I respect them for that. One night my dad was putting me and my 2 other brothers to bed. He started saying his nightly prayer for us, and all of a sudden I felt something physical jump on me from behind as I was sitting up in my bed. I thought it was a cat at first because that's exactly what it felt like. But then I felt like my body erupted into flames, and something started choking me. I freaked out and started screaming at my dad to get it off me. All that was going through my head is something jumped on my back, lit me on fire, and was strangling me. I was also in a complete panic mode. My dad thought I was joking, told me to stop, and was threatening to ground me. My brothers were terrified because I was in my bed screaming, rolling around like I was on fire. I ripped my shirt off, thinking it was in flames. It was so miserable and painful, but I couldn't escape the pain. My mom and sisters heard me screaming and came running into my room. My dad told her I was faking it. Then my mom told me to stop joking. I'm so confused because I feel something with weight on me as I'm burning alive, and I can't fully breathe. I was desperate for them to believe me. I then ran out of my room to go look in the mirror because I couldn't believe my parents couldn't see what was on me. When I got to the mirror, I see my body and throat covered in scratches. Very visible scratches, looked like raised cat scratches. And my body was all red, like I had bad sunburn. Some of the scratches could have been me rolling around and trying to rip off what I thought was on me, but most were deep, raised scratches, and there were dozens on me all over my body and neck. When my parents saw the scratches, they freaked out. Now they believed me. They immediately thought demon and started to pray. It was some prayer like in the name of Jesus, blah blah. I then felt like I had to throw up. My mom ran and grabbed a soup pot from the kitchen, and I threw up into it. It burned so bad coming up, but I immediately felt like that weight was off me. I wasn't on fire, and I could breathe. I was crying, absolutely exhausted, terrified, and so confused. I truly thought I was going to be killed by something I couldn't see. The weird thing about the throw-up part was that it looked like pure oil and water mixed together. Nothing else mixed in. I know it's gross, but there was nothing that looked like regular puke, foot chunks, or whatever. It also smelled so bad, like burning sulfur. Of course, my parents and I thought it was a demonic attack. They blamed me, and made me get rid of my Jurassic Park toys. Somehow they thought Jurassic Park was evil. Spared no expense. I do not believe it was a demonic attack now. I don't believe in demons, ironically. I think I found out what it was years later, but I'm not sure if I want to get into it. It involves some stuff that is pretty personal, so I'll leave it out for now. But I don't think there was a natural or physical explanation, like an allergic reaction to something. Mainly because it immediately went away after my parents started praying. I'm allergic to bees, and when I got stung when I was a kid, it almost killed me. But the bee sting experience was totally different and more extreme. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, episode 236. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do share the video with all your friends and family, and if you did once live in a haunted house, contact the former residents and share the video with them too, just to be nice. Okay, I have a little shout out to give the author of story number 3. There we are, I remembered. Story number 3. I'm going to include a little link to Laura Lee Dunham's Instagram account. And that is Laura Lee Dunham, at Laura Lee Dunham on Instagram. Laura's a model. All her deets and info are on there, including a link to her management page, as well as her Twitch, which is Laura Lee Kitty. And if I haven't included that link, then yell at me and throw cabbages and money. Yeah. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now, because as is standard for me right now, I'm trying to get this video done before I head down to the hospital to do my spinny, dancey thing in the UVB machine. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.